Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. Today is a great day. I am joined all the way from Minnesota and the United States of America by Dr. Michelle Sherman. Dr. Michelle Sherman has been a psychologist for over 30 years. She's done work with Veterans Affairs and the American Red Cross. She has 3 family members that are firefighters, so she's well versed in the first responder world. And she focuses primarily on adults that are experiencing traumatic events, PTSD, and their family members, which is something we haven't really delved into in this podcast. So we're going to break it down today in how can our supportive loved ones help our first responders, but also how can we as first responders help our loved ones help us. So welcome, Dr. Michelle. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Really appreciate the invitation and looking forward to talking with you this afternoon, Nikki.
Yes, I'm very excited to delve in this. And we kind of talked about this a little bit off air. This episode does come kind of at an unfortunate time for our first responder families, in that we had just recently lost a very well-known officer to suicide. And a lot of us were saying, like, I talked to him a couple weeks ago. I thought things, were a little off. I wasn't sure what was going on. But he reassured me he's fine, which is what we do. It's what we do as first responders. We don't want our families to worry about us. We don't want our loved ones to worry about us, or we ourselves don't want to think about it. So we want to tamp it down and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, stop bugging me about it. And so I kind of want to delve into, first of all, how you got into this work and what kind of drives you to do this work, but then into again, the meat and potatoes of it, of what can we do as first responders to help our loved ones support us? And what can our loved ones do to help support us in a way that doesn't make us feel smothered or annoyed?
Yeah. Oh, this is complex. This is such a great conversation. I'm excited. So let's see. I've worked in the VA system with veterans who, of course, also many are or were also police officers, first responders, fire, all sorts of different ways. And so I did that for about 18 years, actually. And I began my focus on supporting families by kind of an interesting story. I was working in, like I said, in this outpatient clinic in this VA, and noticing just all the family members sitting in the waiting room and thinking, their veteran goes in, then they come out. They go in, they come out, and all these families have such similarity and commonality of need and experience, and we're not helping them. And so I started at that time, actually. I wrote my very first little grant and got some money to start creating education curricula for families. And so we'd bring these family members together and have a chance to learn, to talk, to ask questions, to support each other. And Nikki, it was really powerful because so often they feel left out, confused, sad, so many things, right? And so that's actually kind of how it began. And so I've been doing work in this area, helping families for 30 years, a long time. Both the adults who love someone with a mental illness or trauma, because of course there's so much overlap between the two, as well as teenagers whose parent has mental illness or has experienced trauma. So I really think about the whole family. And then, of course, I've been doing individual and couples and group psychotherapy for the trauma survivors themselves for 30 years. So kind of try to look at it all sorts of different angles. So that's a little bit about my background. Again, I've worked a lot with certainly military trauma, military sexual trauma, responding to different disasters through Red Cross, Salvation Army, things like that. So I'm humbled to have learned from a lot of people who've had the courage, the vulnerability to share their experiences with me, and for me to be present and learn from them what they want and how I can be helpful. So that's my background, and I hope what I bring to some of our conversation.
I think that's phenomenal because I love how you said you're treating that all the layers, because there is so many layers. There's so many things. We can treat the persons that's struggling with that mental illness or that post-traumatic stress disorder, right, or whatever it is. But if we don't also then provide the supports for those around them to recognize, say, when that person is starting to spiral again, or to recognize that that outburst of anger and that screaming and shouting at them is not at them. It's not their fault. It's not that they've done anything. It's not that they're bad. It's
Right.
just that that person's lid has flipped and they are at the top and they can't control it and they're trying and they know that they're being crazy. Like we've talked about this multiple times with multiple guests. We know we're being crazy. We know that we are reacting way worse than we should be, but we can't stop it. And so being able to help the family understand that and be able to process that as well. So
absolutely. I mean, it's really tricky, right? Because, I'm an advocate for all parts, certainly an advocate and have empathy for understanding. I mean, part of the core criteria for trauma sorts of disorders is that impulsivity, that reactivity, that being responsive to triggers. Sometimes we can identify, sometimes we can't. And the irritability, anger outbursts are part of the criteria. Absolutely. I get it. And that 0 to 100 that people talk about is I just kind of go off. And then all the regret and guilt and shame that usually follows. And of course, we want families, friends to understand that that's what's going on. I also, this is just an opinion. I mean, you're having me because I could talk about my opinions. I also even think the very worst case of PTSD, depression, whatever, doesn't excuse abusive behavior. And so I also believe it's important for families to know how to set limits, for the trauma survivors to learn skills in managing their own emotions, because I don't think it's a fair excuse or rationalization for abusive behaviors. So it's tricky. That's just Michelle Sherman's opinion, however.
No, and I do agree with that. I think that is exactly it. Like we do need to learn the boundaries because we push them all the time, or we expect automatic, like you will follow what I say, you'll do what I say because at work that's what happens. And so when I come home and I give a direction and you don't immediately jump up and do it, I get mad because I'm like, what are you doing? I've told you, right? Exactly. And so setting that boundary of like, no, that's not how it happens. In like, your kid is going to finish whatever they're doing and then they're going to get up and go do it. You don't need to be on them like screaming at them because they didn't hop up off the couch immediately to do this thing you said, like an inmate would, right? Or so
yeah, that's what you're used to, is that immediate respect and things like that. But I'm going to super date myself and say, do you remember the movie Great Santini? Remember?
No, I don't.
It's a great movie. Okay. It's about the service member who really was in that sort of thing. And then you see the service member, they're moving to a new area. They've got their kids lined up and say, attention. And everyone at, dark 100 hours, da, da, da. It's like this sort of, you expect your children to be in line, just like kind of your troops or your personnel, whoever. It's like, a lot of people try that, but it tends not to work very well. That rigidity in things, even like in combat or an imminent crisis, sometimes you need that. Everything tight and controlled, turning off your own emotions. That can be adaptive, right?
Yes.
If you're in combat and you fall apart when someone next to you is hurt or injured, or whatever, you got to keep going. So that can be adaptive, but that can really thwart intimacy, vulnerability, the ability to relax and be present to your child, to your partner, and things like that. So I find this all very nuanced and actually uncomplicated. Doing couples therapy again for 30 years, you watch, for example, the trauma survivor maybe have an emotional reaction, things like that. And what's most sad to me, Nikki, is then when you see, we'll say it's an intimate partner, them not even like having respond to them because they've seen this sort of vulnerability, reactivity so many times. It's like, oh, please do something, show up and respond to them, because it can become so ingrained of how they react. So it's tricky.
Yes. So break this down for me, because again, we have all different types of listeners on the podcast. We've got first responders, we've got friends, family members, spouses, wives, everybody, people that aren't even in our first responder world. But I feel like this topic really does relate to everybody in that we all have some shit going on somehow, right? And we all have people that love us and that want to walk us through it and that want to be there for us. And how do we do that? So how can we, if we are the families, the loved ones, the spouses of first responders, what do we do? What do we do to support these people?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the biggest gift, the biggest suggestion I would give is letting your first responder know that you are there from them. because the more that you push and nag and beg and yell and scream and things like that, in my experience, the trauma survivor or the person is going to distance. It's called distancer pursuer dance. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before, but that's the couples therapy term that we use, is that the more you kind of push and pursue and things like that, the more that person backs off. And so being present, being vigilant, being aware, checking in regularly. And I'll give some tips in a second, kind of how to check in. But I think the more sometimes you push, the more they back off. And so it's how can I stay present? How can I deal with what feels like rejection without taking it personally? Oh, so much easier said than done. But it's like, okay, this is about him, her, them. This isn't about me. And realize that, okay, maybe at this point I feel I'm really rejected. I really need to take that time to go to yoga, to connect with my friends, to do something spiritual, to get away, to kind of take care of myself. But then come back and strive to not push, not again annoy or nag, but to say, hey, I can tell things are really tough for you. I can tell you're really struggling. You're sleeping a lot or haven't been out of your bedroom kind of for a few days. Just I see you, I'm here, and I want to be a support however I can. And kind of continuing to give that message. Sometimes, not always, sometimes in my experience, the trauma survivor will kind of come around to that. But what's I think important is that you keep giving that message. Because you say, well, you've never asked. Well, never agreed. Keep asking. Keep showing up. It's the consistency that we look for. It's the lack of judgment that, again, you've been drunk every night for the past 3 weeks, that you're not sleeping, that, you're having these angry ups or whatever else is. I love you. I care for you. I'm here for you. I'm on your team. I want to support you. I don't know. How would you please let me support you? And look for ways in which they do support you, because maybe there are things that are less threatening. For example, many folks I've talked about really find it more comfortable to do things like going on a drive. You don't have to have eye contact. Okay. Just be in the same space. Let's do a shared activity together. Let's go on a walk. Again, you don't need eye contact. Okay. That can be less threatening. So what are ways in which my trauma survivor will let me show up for them and in a way that would feel less intrusive for them? So asking them, staying present, doing shared activities that that they like and feel more comfortable with. Totally being careful not to push, because that usually backfires, and taking care of yourself when you are feeling rejected, pushed away, trying to remember that really isn't about you, and getting your own supports, be it your own support group, but your own therapy, spiritual, whatever kind of works for you. But those are, I guess, some of my initial responses. And I can talk, if you'd like, about other ways that I think are helpful for how to specifically talk to the trauma survivor about being supportive. Let me stop there for a second. Any reactions so far?
Yeah, no, like I said, I think that's exactly right, because that is what we hear. Like either they keep asking me and I don't even know how to process it yet. Like I just happened today. I just came home. I just saw this awful thing, or like I haven't even had time to process. Why are you fucking asking me? Right? Like give me 5 minutes to get in the door. Like that's, and so,
absolutely.
And so we do want to share, not necessarily probably the grisly details, but sometimes we need to, but we haven't even processed it yet. And so
absolutely.
And it's not like we can even explain that, because we're still in it.
You're reactive.
Yes. So we're still saying like, don't talk to me. I'm not like, well, I'll talk to you when I'm ready to talk to you. And so they get the holy crap, like, okay, like I was just asking. And meanwhile, we're saying in deep, the little kid inside of us saying, ask me again later once I've had time. And sometimes they don't ask again later. And then you think, well, now they don't give a shit. And so I guess I'll just keep this inside of me because they don't want to hear about it. And I think the other side of that too is sometimes we just don't want to tell our family what we saw, what we witnessed, what we went through was awful. And it was so awful for us that we don't want to tell anybody about it. I don't want them to be traumatized by what, or for them to worry about me when I walk out the door tomorrow going to my job, that, oh my God, like that happened to my mom yesterday, or that happened to my wife yesterday, or my husband yesterday. Like what the frick is going to happen today? So I like that. Like just keep showing up, just keep asking. And I think the big thing,
not intrusively, not intrusively. I'm here. I love you. I care about you. If you want to talk, I'm here. Come to me. I'm not going to keep asking, sort of thing. And I wanted to add, I think this is really hard for family members, is that even if you're their wife, partner, husband, whatever else, they may share more with their buddies than with you. Learn to become okay with that. It's like, hold on, you're my partner. Why don't you tell me everything? It's like, no, as you just said, maybe they're protecting you. Maybe they're trying to not have you be overwhelmed or flooded. Maybe a buddy can understand it frankly better than you can. And working to become okay with that, which is hard for families sometimes.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Blue Line Fitness Testing is a premier law enforcement fitness testing and training center based in Edmonton. Specializing in helping individuals prepare for the physical demands of a career in law enforcement, we offer comprehensive fitness evaluations, specialized training programs, and classes tailored to meet the unique needs of our clients. Our facility hosts a range of classes and are committed to fostering a supportive and empowering environment where clients can achieve their fitness goals. Our team includes experienced trainers who bring specialized expertise in law enforcement, self-defense, personal training, and rehabilitation. We engage through our community through challenges, events, and our podcast, and we are dedicated to helping individuals succeed in their fitness journeys and career aspirations in law enforcement. Are you looking to get started with your career? Come see Blue Line Fitness Testing, and we'll get you there. That yes, that is a phenomenal piece right there, because that is exactly it. And we hear that. And again, that's the breakdown sometimes in those relationships. Well, you won't ever talk to me. You choose to go out with your buddies instead for beers, but you won't come home and tell me what happened. I'm asking about your day and you're not telling me. So yes. So let's jump back then and tell me what you were kind of dipping your toe in there about how can we do it?
I really encourage people to avoid kind of inflammatory words. You have PTSD, you're an alcoholic, I don't even like to use this word. You're crazy. You're off the deep edge. These sorts of inflammatory terms can be really distressing. And so instead, focusing on specific words, I noticed, geez, you haven't been sleeping very well. Or notice you haven't eaten very much. Focusing on those sorts of behavioral things can be less reactive than some of these either labels or judgment. Because obviously for all of us, when we've been through difficult things, the last thing we want is to fear to be seen as weak or to be seen as I'm not handling it well enough or things like this. And so if you can comment on the fact that I'm not sleeping very well, or haven't really eaten very much, that tends to be less reactive. And so notice in specific behavior sort of stuff, avoiding labels, avoiding inflammatory language. The word I'm going to use, and I'm going to use it intentionally, is to try to be curious, but not like a voyeuristic, meaning I want to hear, I want to understand because I care, not because I'm like trying to get all the gory details from you, which again, you could be like, actually, it's not even your business. And I'm not going to share this stuff with you, but I want to be here because I care, because I love you and I want to be supportive of you. Now, I also think it's very important for the family member to be able to say, you know what, babe, this is too much. I need a break. I can't handle this, to be able to give you the sort of feedback, because I wasn't out there, but I know, as you just said a minute ago, you're going to go back out there, whatever, a few minutes. It's like, I need to be able to take a break myself too. And the trauma survivor has to find a way of kind of dealing with that. I mean, it's super interesting. There's been some recent research, and again, I'm a researcher, so I like to cite research, but super interesting research looking at actually how family members and friends react to trauma survivors can seriously impact the course of their health. And so when we get these family members who become critical or distant or judgmental or things like that, it's actually associated with a worse course. So we can get family members being curious but not voyeuristic, being present but not pushy, trying to comment on specific areas of concern rather than pathologizing, and definitely to express hope. Let's face it, most of us experience trauma at some point in our lives. Some people, such as first responders, experience repeated trauma, and of course are at higher risk for having PTSD. But most people in all different kinds of trauma exposure don't develop chronic long-term PTSD. Most people are resilient and do well. And so instilling that sense of hope, I think, is also super important.
Yeah, I agree. We look to our loved ones as like that source of normal. And so when they start to go like, oh, okay, well, this is not getting any better, and this is not like, and you're still not better, you're still doing these things, you're still acting like this, like this is, then we start to go, oh my God, this is never going to get better. I'm never going to be back to normal. I'm never going to be able to be the person that I was before I started this job, or about, like maybe you met your spouse at the beginning of your career and you're 10 years in now. And right. And so if we start to lose that hope that we can be normal when we take off our uniform, that is a definite, that takes us down a spiral too, because you just go,
Sure.
am I that screwed up? Like, has this job really screwed me up that bad that now the people that basically vowed to love me unconditionally are now like, I don't know about that. Right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And we all get that trigger of being alone, being rejected. And I mean, that sense can absolutely compound any sort of depression or anxiety or trauma. I mean, the trauma can often happen in community and we heal in community. It happens in relationship often, not always, and we heal in relationship. So there are wonderful psychotherapies like couples therapies, like there's one in particular called emotion focused therapy that has been with trauma survivors that is extremely helpful looking at the bond, the attachment between the two of you. So these things I'm saying today about being present, being curious, being supportive, finding ways to connect in small ways, expressing hope, expressing love, expressing admiration. Hey, you keep putting yourself out there for our community, for our family, and such courageous ways. And I just so admire you continuing to give those sorts of loving messages. That builds that bond. So the trauma survivor or the person with repeated exposure to trauma can know I can come back and be safe, to be seen. Even if I am a little jumpy or startle response or these sorts of things, I know that these are my people and they believe in me. I can be okay here.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because that is exactly it. We do want to decompress when we come home. We do want to be present for our families. We do want to take off that armor and be able to just be us at home. And when you don't and I was actually just having this conversation on a different episode. If you either have to feel safe at home or safe at work, you have to feel safe somewhere. And if both of those places you don't feel safe, your body just starts to self-destruct because it's like at no place can I actually take off the armor. I can't take it off at work and I can't take it off at home. And maybe work is more relaxing for you. Sometimes it is. If your home life is in a shambles, going to work sometimes is a freaking break. And you're like, thank Jesus that I'm leaving the house for 8 hours today, right? But then if work is a gong show, you want to make sure that when you come home from that gong show, that you're able to take the armor off and you can decompress when you get there. And it sounds to me like you're doing a really good job of kind of painting the the mediation, I guess, or kind of like I'm losing my word, but you got to give a little and then you get a little, but you also got to give a little. So as a supportive spouse, you got to keep asking, but you can't push, right? And as the first responder, you need to respect the boundaries. You can't just unleash on your loved ones because you had a bad day or scream at them or be abusive. You need to recognize that there are those boundaries and that crossing them is not acceptable. And so how is it that we can then flip the page and say, okay, now here I am as a first responder. How do I talk to my spouse? Or my loved ones, my family, my friends? How do I let them know? And again, taking it back to our friend that we just lost. We say all the time, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Everything's fine. No problem, guys. Don't worry about me. I'm good. I'll reach out if I need help. How do we do that? How do we do that? And in a way that isn't going to make us feel like we are dumping our shit on the people that we love?
That's such a good question, Nikki. To me, a sharing of pain, be it at the extreme of suicidal thoughts, to hopelessness, sadness, anxiety, certainly. God, we haven't talked about anxiety yet today, but, anxiety, dread, worry, guilt, shame, all these sorts of things. I like to think about it as kind of an onion, okay? And that we kind of peel off these different layers. So instead of the first responder thinking, oh, I have to dump everything, I have to share everything. No, we don't start there. just little bits and see how it's responded. Just sharing a little bit. Even as like, how's your day? It was actually kind of rough. And then hopefully your family member who's tuned into you is going to be like, oh gosh, shoot. Tell me more. That curiosity I was telling about. Okay. But try it. Little steps, little bits and see how it's received. You may find out that the people that you think are going to respond well don't. You may be surprised. A brother, a friend, whomever else, maybe someone who can really hear you Because if you've been kind of putting up a mask, as many trauma survivors do, for a long time, your family members may not be good at tuning in and noticing these things. So it's a process. It's a starting, it's a sharing and seeing how it goes. Now, of course, this typically evokes anxiety. It's like, oh crap, what are they going to think about me? Are they going to think I'm losing my marbles, that I'm whatever else?
Yeah.
So it's gradual. It's looking for responses and looking for safety, looking for people who are going to hear you, who are going to be present with you, who are going to support you. And you're going to learn are going to be okay when you're not 100%, when you don't have your shit together all the time. Because face it, nobody does, right?
Yeah.
And it's like we need people and places in our world in which we can just be. And so I would encourage people to think about it's not I have to dump it all. No, that's actually probably not helpful. Other than with a therapist, go to the therapist. That's fine. People with friends, family in your life, just little bits. And then if they respond in a helpful, supportive way, try a little more, and do it kind of gradually. And then super importantly, when I talk to couples or families, so much of it is asking the first responder, say, how could your family member help you? What do you want? And so I'm going to give you a super simple skill here. I teach folks all the time, both the survivor and the person exposed to trauma and the family members, to try this exercise. That is, either when you're sharing or when you're the listener, ask the other person, what is it that I want from you? Or what do you want from me? Do you want me just to listen? Do you want me to kind of problem solve? Or do you want me to try to help and try to fix it? Or do you want me just to hold you? What is it that you want from me right now? Because it goes so much better. Sometimes people just like, I just want to dump. I just want to vent. Okay, that takes a lot of relief off the other person. It's like, oh, phew, I have to fix it or solve it, whatever else. But asking for what you want, it sounds so simple, Nikki, but it's really not. People don't do it. Ask them for what you want. And then the other person simply trying to focus and lean into that. It's a super easy, great skill that lots of people can use.
That I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've actually started doing that with a friend who's going through a lot of stuff. And I was always going to, because I'm a fixer. There was, I like I've talked about this in the podcast. I thought about being a psychologist, and then I took the course where you had to do like the counseling. And I was like, well, this is what you need to do. You need to do this and this. And the professor was like, fail. And I was like, what do you mean fail? And he was like, that's not the job. And I was like, but I know the answer to help them. And he was like, fail. so I'm the fixer. I'm always like, well, let me help you. Let me help. I know what we need to do. And so, but I found same thing with her. She's just recently lost her father totally unexpectedly. She's having family issues with her siblings over, the loss. And it's been a nightmare for her. And so I noticed like trying to fix, and she would just shut down further, or, like the rage would amp up. And I was like, I'm not helping things here. Like, and this is just me as a friend, but I was like, I am really not being a good friend right now, because I can see I've made it worse. And so I said, I saw that somewhere. Do you want me to problem solve, or do you just want to vent? And so I asked her one day, I was like, do you want me to give you advice on this, or do you want to just rant? And she's like, I just need to rant. And I was like, rant away. Go girl. I will not. I'll be like, fuck yes, I got you. Like I got it right. And it was such a better conversation. Yes. At the end of it, she was like, so now what do you think I should do? And I was like, okay. Yes. And so I was like, okay, but are you actually asking me? Or is that part of? And she was like, no. She goes, because now, like, I've got it all out. I've been able to like talk my way through it, inventing or ranting to you. And now, like, even as I was saying it, I was like, oh, well, I didn't think about this and what about this? And she's like, so what do you think? And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you what my opinion is if you actually want it. If you don't want it, though, I'm willing to step back. And if you need to rant again. But it was, and it's worked so many different times now in different things where it's like, well, do you want my advice on what to do about this? And she's like, yes, like you've done this before. I don't know what the frick I'm doing. I need your help. Okay. Yeah, I'm got you. Or nope, I had a horrible day and I've just dealt with this and I'm going to punch my sister in the face. And so therefore I need to rant, and rant away, girl. You light it up. So yes, it is such a powerful, and I think it also gives the person who is feeling all the feels and is in that moment, they got to kind of stop and go, yeah, what do I want from this? Do I want to just like blah and get it all out? Do I want somebody to give me advice? Do I want help? Do I want and so then that kind of changes too how you feel, because you go, yeah, no, I just want to rant. I just really want to scream and yell and rant and get my anger out. or like, no, I'm totally hopelessly lost. I have no idea what to do right now. I'm so anxious. I'm so scared and I need to get this off my chest, but I need you to tell me what you think I should do. So
Exactly. Yep,
Mhm.
exactly. So it's empowering for both sides, isn't it? And
Mhm.
for the listener, it can be like, oof, kind of a relief because, like, okay, I don't know what to do. You have been so upset and concerned, overwhelmed by something. It's just, we call it kind of the ministry of presence, even if it's not, I'm not talking religion here, but
Mhm.
just being present with someone with the curious care, love, listening. I'm here for you. Just those messages. Geez, damn, that's hard. Wow, I can't imagine. Those sorts of empathic sorts of messages, a long ways.
Yes. Yes. You've shared so many amazing things today. Like it's just been like wisdom bomb after wisdom bomb after wisdom bomb. I love that we've gotten tangible strategies from this though too. We've gotten like do this, don't do this, do this,
Right.
try this, right? Like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think the other side of it too is if you try one thing and it doesn't work,
Right.
you just try something else. And
Absolutely.
that's on both sides. So if you as the first responder, if you go to your loved one and you share a little bit and they don't reciprocate and they don't respond, that doesn't mean that that's the be all end all, because we also have to
Right.
respect maybe they've had a shitty day.
Yeah.
Maybe you came home from a shitty day and they've had a shitty day and they are not actually, they don't have the capacity to take
Right.
on your shit on top of their shit
Absolutely.
today. But if you ask them again tomorrow or you try again
Right.
tomorrow, there might
Right.
be that, right? That reciprocity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So checking in, hey, are you at a place you can hear some of this right now instead of just vomiting all this emotion? It's like, are you at a place, do you have the emotional capacity right now to kind of listen? And if not, okay, then maybe I'm going to go talk to someone else, or I'm going to pray or journal or exercise or whatever else to kind of deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Exactly.
Well, and I
Keep
know
being
that,
present. Keep being
yes.
present. Keep being present. That's the thing. Keep use. There's a researcher by the name of John Gottman who keeps talking about turning toward being there, being present instead of turning away or ignoring or turning against and being a jerk. Keep keep turning toward your partner.
I love that. I love that. I know that we're short on time, so I just wanted to check and see, was there anything else that you wanted to kind of dive into? Anything else that you wanted to share in regards to our, what we can do, the work we can do, the
Yeah.
support that we can give?
I think, as you just said, it's an iterative process, and what's going to work for one couple or a couple of people may be different from someone else. Some people may really do great having, for example, weekly check-ins. Okay, how are you? How are you? How are we? Some people may find that horrible and never want to do that sort of thing. Some people, I really think the shared activity makes a big difference. I have couples who, go on walks every day, just to have that kind of regular check-in sort of stuff. Realizing, of course, that there can be hard times, anniversaries, after specifically bad events and things like that. And so being tuned in to what may be some of their triggers. But I just can't emphasize enough what I think of the importance of families clearly being present, caring, all the sort of thing, and then also having their own time, their own activities, their own support, things like that. It could be families of other first responders and things like that. It could be people who have nothing to do with the whole sort of world. But at times, just by definition, when people who've experienced a lot of trauma have a hard time in being present for their loved one. We talked today more about, I think, some of the irritability, the outbursts, the dumping, and things like that. To me, in couples therapy, what I see is just as impactful is at times the difficulty being emotionally available for your partner. Because you are consumed with the memories, the thoughts, the feelings, and things like that, which can be very lonely for the family. And so at that time, again, try not to take that personally and finding ways to fill your cup to have that connection in other ways, which is what I was talking earlier about. What are other ways in which you can connect? Certainly, some people, physical intimacy, some people shared beauties, parenting, and there are lots of ways in which people can connect. But realizing that at times, that emotional numbing that some people experience a lot of trauma can be super impactful on relationships. And that's again why I keep saying for the family members, find other people, activities, hobbies, therapy, whatever else to get some support as well.
Yeah, that I think is huge too, because it is. You become resentful if you're consistently offering and then the loved one is not taking you up on it. And then what do? You start to look for that love and that support and that, ability for somebody to be there for you elsewhere, be it the spouse looks elsewhere or the first responder looks elsewhere.
Right.
And that's how that stuff breaks down. It's absolutely how that stuff breaks down. Yes. So powerful.
Therapy can be helpful, can be a way to talk through some of those things, or getting individual therapy or things like that. I mean, there are lots of ways to do this, but I think the emotional numbing, and let's face it, people who first responders experience a lot of trauma, at times, some of them are just doing their best to make it through the day. So they don't have that surplus. It's not that they don't love or want to be present, but they simply are too stressed or triggered or overwhelmed. Helping family members not take that personally and get support for themselves is the part that I wanted to add.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, it has been a treat. It's been an actual honor to have you on the show to share that. Just again, for me, it's the tangible things that people can take away.
Yeah.
We can talk about this all day long, but if you finish the episode and you go, well, now what the fuck do I do?
Right.
At least now our listeners are going to, the listeners are walking away with, what they can do. And again, if you are not a spouse or a family member of a first responder, you're not a first responder, try it. Try this stuff out in your relationships. Try it out. Try it out and just see what happens. And you might even just one little shift, right? If we can bring a little bit more love, a little bit more compassion, a little bit more grace to our relationships.
Yes.
I mean, just imagine how much better the world would be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just do want to say that far, 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 far more tips than I could share in, 45 minutes are in our book, what has recently come out, called Loving Someone, Now with the Mental Illness or History of Trauma, Practical Skills, Hope, and Strength for Your Journey. So it just came out actually a couple months ago, published by Johns Hopkins University Press here in the States. It's available on Amazon or Indigo or wherever. But I would want to note that that's a resource that we hope is helpful and available. And as opposed to many books, it's not just like a textbook with all this content. It's like a workbook. It's interactive. It's stories, activities, reflection, people with lived experience sharing their story. We have a whole long chapter. The whole trauma chapter is on firefighters, actually, in terms of some of their experiences. So we have a lot on kind of first responder sort of stuff. So just if people are interested, I'd love to do a shout out for that. And then the parallel book for teens whose parent has also experienced trauma called I'm Not Alone, a teen's guide to living with a parent who has mental illness or experienced trauma. Both of them are available, again, anywhere. Although you can look at our website, which is www.seeds with an S, Seeds of Hope Books with an S.com. Seeds of Hope Books, and you can see sample chapters, and also there are lots of free resources there, lots of stuff that we'd love folks to check out if they found this helpful.
Fantastic. And I will be putting all of that in the show notes. We'll be direct linking to the book, guys. So if you're checking in the show notes, you can click on it. It'll take you right to that book, to both of those books. And I think, the teen stuff for sure is a big thing too, because those kids, I've got one right now and one coming into it, and there's big emotions going on. And so
that'll be a whole nother podcast, Nikki. If you want to talk another day.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Sherman. It has been great. And I hope we get to reconnect again. I would love to have you on the show again and break down some more of this great work that you're doing and share some more of your wisdom. But it's been a treat. It's been a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I totally enjoyed it. It was an awesome conversation. I love your passion, your energy, and I'm really hopeful that our conversation will be helpful to others. So thank you.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your six.